This is ATL Day Ones, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Welcome into ATL Day Ones with Jarvis and T, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. We are here. It is a Monday. It is game week. We're actually going to see running backs get tackled to the ground on Friday. Falcons taking on the Detroit Lions. I am super excited. We got a lot on board for you today. And first of all, we want to say thank you, though, for making ATL Day Ones your first listen of the day. And remember, we're free and available wherever you download your podcast. And wherever you download your podcast, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Guys, you are rocking and rolling with us because we are almost at 3,000 subscribers. We're at 2,800 right now.
Wow.
You guys
Awesome.
have been absolutely amazing. We never want to take that for granted, so we appreciate you for that. But, oh, man, the Braves got the butts kicked over the weekend. That's pretty much how we can do that. T and I are going to take you into our training camp notebook. We were out there over the weekend sweating and getting our thing in, trying to figure it out, what's going on with this Atlanta Falcons team. We'll reveal all of that to you on today. And last but not least, and for the culture, DeJounte Murray is a little petty, and I like it. We'll talk about all of that and for the culture. But first, Braves lose yesterday. Spencer Strider had an appearance. I can't even say he was on the mound. He was out there for a couple of innings, got bounced out of there. But I would have to say you have to give all the credit to Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer and the likes of those guys because they were just absolutely amazing. T.
Yeah, and not just Max Scherzer and of course Jacob deGrom, but Edwin Diaz once again gave them everything they needed. He alone won up the whole Braves bullpen. Let's just be real.
Yeah.
But yeah, those two combining for 19 strikeouts yesterday, 19 strikeouts in the series finale. And once again, the Braves to me, yesterday was a flip. You know how we've been talking all the time, Mets gonna Met, no, Braves gonna Brave was what we saw last night. And that was the bad version of Braves gonna Brave, not the good. And there were a couple things that kind of stood out there as well. One of which you've mentioned, Jacob deGrom was just amazing. Spencer Strider just had an off day. And it started very early because when you saw Brandon Nimmo get to the plate, and I think it may have been an 0-2 count or something, but Spencer Strider was definitely up in the count. And you just see Brandon Nimmo just wait. Foul ball, foul ball, foul ball. And before you know it, 10 pitches in. And now he's got himself a single. That's what they do. That's the Mets' specialty. They are going to be patient at the plate, and the Braves pitchers have to understand that. They've got to be willing and able to, and you kind of you alluded to this Friday in terms of getting whatever your third pitch is, Spencer Strider, whatever that third pitch is, you've got to perfect it, and you've got to bring it each and every time because the Mets will wear you out. They will sit there and stare you down until the count is in their favor. And then what do? They get on base, and then that's how they keep doing it. They're not interested in or about that long ball, rarely. And that's really all the Braves were able to get a lot of the time throughout the entire series. In fact, that's the only reason they were on the board last night is because of the long ball. So yeah, saw some things, Jarvis, that made me question things a little bit about how this is going to play out in the long term.
Speaking of how it's going to play out in the long term, we'll talk about whether or not what's more likely, the Braves catching the Mets or the Phillies catching the Braves in the wild card. We'll talk about that. But first, T, tell the folks about BetOnline.
Yeah, and maybe that's something you want to go and bet on. Are you still willing to bet that the Braves are going to win this division? Or are you willing to say that, hey, you know what? I think that in a minute, I might just go with the dark horse, the Phillies, to actually chase down the Braves in that wild card race, because that's not actually far off. Like it was Friday, now it's not. So that is why you should go to betonline.net because it'll give you all that information. Betting needs, sports info, podcasts. And I think that's kind of cool because, of course, we do a podcast. So I think it's kind of cool to be able to tap into a podcast to get the information that you need. Or if you're basic and just getting yours betting on and just getting started in that area, this is the spot for you. You want to talk Braves, you want to talk MLB, your bigger leagues, your pro leagues like NFL and NBA, this is the tool. But also MMA, boxing, golf. So the niche sports, they are on top of that as well. So listen, all you have to do today is go to their website, betonline.net, to get all of that information, all of that news, wagering info, live betting, the whole bit. BetOnline.net today after this show. You can get it on your device, any device you have. And that is because if you want to know where the game starts, it starts right there.
No doubt about it. Make sure you go check out betonline.net. Now, T, the Braves currently 6.5 games because they want to lose 4 out of 5 games against the Mets over the weekend. Now, we talked about whether or not they're going to be able to catch the Mets, right? Let's talk about that first, National League East,
Yes.
because they have 7 games left against the Mets. And and not too long from now, they're going to have another series at Truist.
Yes.
So the Braves have to kind of dust themselves off and get themselves together,
Mm-hmm.
or there's a possibility that they won't have a chance of catching, the
Yeah.
New York Mets in the National League East.
Exactly. So you talk about the fact, and this was interesting to me because yes, they are still ahead of where they were last year. They were at 55 and 55. But the Mets are way ahead of where they were last year. So
No
that's
doubt.
where the challenge is for
Yes.
me. And like you said, you talk about the 7 games, 4 of which are coming up in the next week against the Mets. And Brian Snitker's got to figure some things out, because one thing I will say about Buck Showalter, I think he outmanaged Brian Snitker this
Oh,
weekend.
hands down. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's not even
I
a
think
question.
he had a strategy, and his
He
team
understood the
delivered
assignment.
to perfection. He did. Like Snit, you got to understand the assignment when you come back home. You really,
Yes.
really do. So yeah, I think that that's going to be the telltale sign. Of course, bounce back, get it done in Boston the next couple of nights. Go ahead and just get those 2 wins, just so you can get back in your rhythm and kind of shake this off and get that bad taste out of your mouth. But
Hmm.
I think that if they're going to erase that 6.5 game deficit, just like they erased that 10.5 game deficit, they're going to have to win games at the clip that the Mets are winning, because the Mets have won 12 of the last 14. So Braves, you've got to come up, because now, including, this series, if you will, and even the Phillies series, you're talking about now 7, or I think it's like 7 games out of the last 10, you've dropped, or 6 games out of the last 10. But regardless, you're on the losing end of that. That's where I think the problem is. So yeah, you're going to have to win at the same clip as the Mets the rest of the way, and hope that they lose some critical games, especially some divisional matchups and against you, in order for you to get back in this race.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think that the Braves are going to have take advantage of the little bit easier schedule than the Mets now, and so
Yes, very little.
yeah, very very little. So I think that's the thing that the Braves have to focus on, and just getting
Yeah.
their minds right, because, like you said,
Hmm.
you had Ian Anderson. He was optioned down to AAA, so that's kind of something that's kind of been lingering as well. Is he going to be able to get
Yeah.
back? Is Jake Odorizzi going to be able to take his spot? It's
Right.
just like you said, Snicker's gonna have to step up his game, because he's
Hmm.
gonna have to really pull off a really solid
Yes,
managerial job right now, because like he said, he got
absolutely.
outmanaged this weekend, and it showed. And I think that, with
Hmm.
Buck Showalter and the things that he did and decision that he made, and how quick of a trigger he had,
Yes.
even when the game that the Braves won,
Yes.
that just showed you, like, all right, like, get out of here. Like, it's not your day, and we're going to
Yep.
move on. And I think Snick kind of was very responsive with Spencer
Hmm.
Strider
Yes.
yesterday. And I think that was kind of one of the reasons why he did that, and it stick with Strider as long as he probably would have if it
Hmm.
wasn't a series against the Mets. So I think that that's
Yeah.
something to keep an eye on going forward. But, like, if moving on to this wild card race, now the Phillies aren't too far behind. Like, they're 9-1 in their last 10 games, and they
Hello.
are riding high. And I think
Yes.
that the Braves have to be careful, because there's a possibility they could catch him. Now I will say this: I don't think that's going to happen. I think the
Right.
Braves can lock down that wild
Yeah.
card spot,
Yeah.
but but you have to be very careful and kind of take these last good bit amount of games for the month of August and going into September. You're gonna have
Yeah.
to approach each game with that mindset that you had once the Mets showed you how you're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. Yeah, because when you look at that stretch, and you're talking about a team that's won, 12 of the last 14, like you said, 9-1 and 6-4, that math ain't mathing,
Yeah,
because
come on now.
you and about that same stretch, a little bit longer stretch with the Mets example, but nonetheless, they're right there at 9-1, I think, in that same stretch, or 8-2. You can't afford to drop 4 games, because like you said, I don't think that the Phillies will necessarily catch them, but the Phillies are only 9.5 out of first place themselves. So
Right.
if you're looking at just a 3-game stretch between you and them, or gap, and then you're looking at a 6.5 game stretch looking up, you got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think that's something that we'll definitely have to keep an eye on as the Braves continue to try to figure this thing out. Like I said, and also Huskar Noah has been brought up as well.
Mhm.
And that's something you're gonna keep an eye on too. You know, he's
Yes.
brought up as an extra arm. And I think Ian Anderson is for him, just kind of looking at some of the comments from him after he found out about being optioned down to
Mhm.
AAA. I think
Yeah.
he's a guy who's kind of like myself. I'm cautiously optimistic. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I don't think it's going to be something that's going to hinder him going
Right.
forward. I think it's something that's going to, if he takes some time to kind of figure out why he's down there and get his head right, I think he'll be perfectly fine because we know he can do it, right? And I think it's just a matter of him figuring out how he can get to that space.
Agreed. And I want to take the same stance that you've taken. I want to take the same stance that Ian Anderson has taken. Hey, you're going to be like an AJ Minter. You're going to go down there, you're going to retool some things, and you're going to come up bigger and better, whether that's just retooling the mechanics or the mental, because that's another piece of it. At some point, it starts to get in your head when you keep
Mm-hmm.
having these types of games. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a good thing. And Alex Anthopoulos, although he had that amazing Saturday, right before the trade deadline, Alex Anthopoulos was still looking at the whole body of work and still chose to keep him. So I do think that's a positive in his space. And I know one thing you and I talked about offline as well were some of the positives, if any, from this series. And I just wanted to give one positive before we wrap up, and that's Ronald Acuna Jr.,
Yes,
particularly in game 2.
agreed.
I know he had a
Mm-hmm.
little soreness yesterday, so he ends up pinch hitting, but you got to give him credit when he goes 4 of 5 at bats and he's swinging that ball again, looking like Ronald Acuna slowly but surely. And back to your point, Jarvis, if the Braves are going to go on a run that's going to keep pace with the Mets and stave off the Phillies, if there's any guy that's got to come up big,
Got to.
it's him.
No doubt about it, and there's nothing to add to that
No.
because I think you laid it out just how it was supposed to be laid out. So, coming up next, though, we're gonna lay out exactly what we saw over the weekend as ATL Day Ones went on the road to Flowery Branch. We gassed up the cars and we got on out there. We're gonna tell you exactly what we saw over the weekend. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. This is ATL Day Ones part with Jarvis and T, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. We'll be right back.